The compound fell silent the moment Zina's knees hit the ground. 1 second, she was standing beside the plantain tower at her father's 60th birthday celebration, trying to make herself invisible among the guests. The next, her cousin Obinna had grabbed her shoulder with his palm wine breath hot against her face and shouted, "Come on, Zina. Just once. Say it. Say happy birthday, Papa Adewale."
Say it now.
The name left his lips like a weapon. Zina's mouth opened. Not by choice,
I can't.
but as if an invisible hand had pried her jaw apart. Her tongue moved against her will, forming the first syllable. "I." Then her body erupted. She convulsed violently, her spine arching backward at an impossible angle. Blood burst from her nose in thick streams, splattering across her yellow Ankara dress. Her eyes rolled back until only the whites showed. Foam gathered at the corners of her mouth. The women screamed. Someone's ceramic plate shattered against the concrete. Her stepbrother Chima stood in the corner, his laughter cutting through the chaos like broken glass. "The cursed one strikes again.
Help!
Even her body rejects our father's name."
Look at her now.
Zina's fingers
Pathetic.
clawed at her own throat as if trying to pull something invisible away. She couldn't breathe, couldn't see. The world became a blur of colors and muffled
Take her away from
shouts.
here immediately.
Then her father's voice, cold as January harmattan wind. "Get her out of my sight." Two housemaids
Take her away
dragged
from
her
here
away by the
immediately.
arms, her feet scraping uselessly against the ground. The celebration continued behind her. Someone turned the music back up. But what they didn't know was that inside Zina's silence lived a power their grandfather had murdered to contain. Chief Adewale Okonkwo's compound stretched across half an acre in the heart of Umuahia. 3 separate buildings connected by a shared courtyard where clothes hung on sagging lines and children fought over mango seeds. 3 wives, 15 children. A hierarchy as rigid as iron. Zina belonged to the bottom. She was the eldest daughter of Obiagili, the first wife, the woman who had once been beautiful, who had once held her husband's heart, who now coughed blood into handkerchiefs and barely left her room. While the
Nobody
second
else
wife's sons
stands a
wore new
chance
sneakers to
against
church
us.
and the third wife's daughters had their hair braided at
These
expensive
new clothes
salons
feel
every month,
amazing.
Zina patched her own clothes and plaited her own hair in the cracked mirror of the smallest room in the compound. The golden children were easy to spot. Chima, Emeka, Dubam and Ikena, the second wife's 4 sons. They walked like princes through the compound, their voices always the loudest, their laughter always at someone else's expense. Chief Adewale watched them with pride that glowed warm in his eyes, the kind of pride Zina had long stopped hoping would ever turn her direction. Every evening at dinner, the pattern repeated itself. The second wife's children ate first, their plates piled high with meat. The third wife's children ate second. Zina and her younger siblings, 2 brothers who avoided her eyes, ashamed of her strangeness, ate last, scraping what remained from the bottom of the pot. She slept in a room barely bigger than a storage closet, tucked behind the kitchen where the smell of old palm oil seeped into her mattress. At night, when the compound finally fell quiet, she could hear everything through the thin walls. Her
She
father's
really thought
laughter
she
from the
could stay.
second wife's quarters, her mother's wet coughs from across the courtyard, the whispered insults her stepbrothers traded about her. But Zina was not stupid and she was not weak. She watched everything. She listened to everything. She learned how the compound worked, who held real power, the second wife, who held secret power, the elderly gateman who knew everyone's comings and goings, who would betray you for an extra piece of meat, almost everyone. Her mother's warnings came in whispers, always late at night when she thought Zina was sleeping. "Never
Promise
speak
me
it,
you
my
will
daughter.
never speak
Never.
your father's name.
Your life depends on your
Never.
silence." But silence, Zina had learned, was its own kind of prison. What she wanted, what burned in her chest like swallowed coals, was simply to belong. To sit at the table and not feel the weight of disgust in her father's glance. To hear him say her name the way he said Chima's. With pride, with warmth,
Promise me
with
you
the
will
acknowledgement
never
that
speak
she
your
was
father's
his.
name.
Instead, she was
Never.
that one or the cursed girl, or worst of all, nothing at all. Invisible. It had started on her 7th birthday. Zina could still remember the yellow cake her mother had begged the second wife to help bake. The small gathering in the courtyard. Her father, still willing to pretend back then, sitting in his carved wooden chair while children ran circles around him. She had been so happy, so innocent. She'd run up to him with a drawing she'd made, a family portrait with everyone holding hands, and pressed it into his lap. Thank you, Papa Adewale. The world tilted. Her small body hit the ground before the second syllable left her mouth. She remembered the taste of blood, sharp and metallic. The feeling of her lungs refusing to pull air. Her mother's screams. Her father's face above her, not worried but angry, as if she had embarrassed him on purpose. She'd woken 3 hours later in the medicine man's hut at the edge of town. Papandu, the oldest Dibia in 5 villages, had stood over her with smoke curling from a clay pot. His face grave. This child carries something I have never seen, he'd told her parents. A spiritual blockage tied to your bloodline. Her tongue is forbidden from speaking the father's name. If she tries, her body will reject it violently. Her father had gone to 6 other medicine men. 4 pastors. 2 imams. A visiting prophet from Ghana. Same diagnosis. Same helpless shaking of heads. It is ancestral, they all said.
The sickness
it is
not
in
of
the
the
blood.
body.
The
It is
nickname
an
came from
ancestral
Chima, of
spiritual
course.
blockage.
He'd started
must
calling her
appease them.
Amumu, the mute one, when they were children, and it had stuck like palm oil on fabric. Now even adults in the market used it, not bothering to remember her real name. 19 years she had lived with this curse. 19 years of watching her father flinch every time she entered a room, as if her very presence was a reminder of some failure he refused to name. And now he wanted to get rid of her. 2 weeks ago, he'd announced her engagement to a palm wine tapper from 3 villages away, a widower twice her age with 6 children and a reputation for beating his late wife.
It is with great pleasure that I announce the engagement
He has
of my
agreed to take her
daughter Zina
despite
to this
everything,
esteemed
her
palm
father
wine
had
tapper.
said, not even looking at her during the announcement. We should be grateful. The wedding was set for next month. Zina had not been asked if she agreed. But the night before the groom's family was scheduled to visit and finalize the arrangements, something changed. Zina lay on her thin mattress, staring at the water-stained ceiling when she heard it. A voice she'd been ignoring her entire life. It came not from outside, but from within. From that deep place beneath her ribs where the curse lived. And for the first time in 19 years it spoke clearly. If you want to break what binds you, you must first uncover what was buried. The Umuahia main market on Saturday was a living beast. Thousands of voices bargaining, arguing, laughing, the air thick with the smell of dried fish and fresh pepper. Zina moved through it like a ghost, carrying her mother's basket to buy gari and vegetables for the week. She'd learned to navigate the market in silence, pointing at what she needed, nodding at prices, avoiding eye contact. Most traders knew her by now. Most pitied her. Some whispered prayers when she passed. But she hadn't seen the second wife's trap coming. Mama Chima, that's what everyone called her, never by her own name, always defined by her golden son, had positioned herself at the busiest intersection of the market, surrounded by her friends from the Women's Guild. Zina tried to slip past unnoticed, but the woman's voice cut through the crowd like a machete. Aha! Zina! Come here! Zina's feet stopped. Her stomach dropped. Around them, heads turned. The market had excellent ears for drama. Mama Chima's smile was sweet poison. I've been looking for you. Come greet me properly. Come say, good afternoon, Mama Chima. Let everyone here witness that you have home training. The trap was elegant in its cruelty. A simple greeting. Impossible to refuse without seeming disrespectful. Impossible to give. Zina bowed her head slightly, her hands clasped in respect. But she didn't speak. What is this? Mama Chima's voice rose, performing for the growing audience. A whole-grown woman cannot greet her senior. Zina, what did I just ask you to do? Leave the poor girl alone, someone muttered from the crowd. But Mama Chima was just getting started. She stood, her wrapper rustling, her face twisted in theatrical shock. Do you people see this? This is the daughter of Chief Adewale Okonkwo, the man who built the new church hall, the man who sponsors 10 children's school fees. And his own daughter is so cursed, so marked by darkness, that she cannot even speak a simple greeting. The crowd's murmur grew louder. Some people backed away slightly, as if her curse might be contagious. You know what they say about women like this? Mama Chima continued, her voice dripping with false concern. A woman who cannot call her husband's name is not a woman at all. She is something else, something wrong, something that brings misfortune to a household. She turned to address the market fully now, a preacher at her pulpit. And now Chief Adewale, in his infinite mercy, has found a man willing to marry her. Can you imagine? A good man willing to take on this burden. But me, I worry. I told my husband just yesterday. What will she call him when they are alone? Will she point and grunt like an animal? The laughter started. First scattered, then building. Even people who knew better, who should have defended her, let their lips curl in amusement. The humiliation was too juicy to resist. Zina's eyes found her younger brothers in the crowd. They looked away. Shame. Not of Mama Chima but of her. Then she saw him. Her father standing beside his friend's kiosk, watching the entire scene unfold. She waited for him to step forward, to tell Mama Chima to stop, to defend his own daughter. Instead, his face showed something worse than anger. Deep bone-settling shame. He turned and walked away, melting into the crowd as if she didn't exist. As if he couldn't bear to be associated with the spectacle she'd become. Something inside Zina shattered. The basket fell from her hands, vegetables rolling across the dusty ground. She didn't bend to pick them up. She ran, past the pointing fingers, past the laughter, past the pitying faces that were somehow worse than the cruel ones. Her vision blurred with tears, but her feet knew the way home. Except she didn't want home. She couldn't face that compound, those walls, those faces. By the time she stopped running, her lungs burned and her wrapper was soaked with sweat and tears. She found herself at the old well at the edge of the village, the one children were warned never to approach, the one where 2 people had drowned decades ago. Zina stood at its edge and looked down into the black water below. I would rather die, she thought with a clarity that frightened her, than live as their joke. The well was deep, deeper than memory, the kind of deep you don't come back from. Zina's fingers gripped the crumbling stones at its edge. 1 step. That's all it would take. 1 step, and the laughter would stop. The shame would end. Her father wouldn't have to look away anymore because there would be nothing left to look at. The thought should have terrified her. Instead, it felt like relief. She lifted 1 foot. Come home, child of my child. The voice didn't come from behind her.
Come home,
it came from inside her chest, resonating in her bones, vibrating in that same place where the curse lived. But this wasn't pain. This was recognition. Zina stumbled backward from the well's edge, her heart hammering. Who? Come home. She knew that voice. Not from hearing it, but from somewhere deeper. From blood memory, from the stories her mother told in whispers, from dreams she couldn't quite remember upon waking. Grandmother Neoma.
Come home,
but that was
child of
impossible.
my child.
Grandmother Neoma had been dead for 23 years. Died 2 years before Zina was even born. Her mother never spoke about her except in fragments, and always with a strange mixture of love and fear. Come home, the voice said again, and this time Zina felt a pull. Not physical, but magnetic, as if a string attached to her sternum was being tugged gently but insistently toward the forest. She looked back at the well once, then at the path that led back to the compound, then at the bush path everyone avoided, the one that led to the old family land, where the original homestead had been before Chief Adewale built his modern compound in town. Her feet moved before her mind decided. The pull grew stronger as she walked, guiding her through overgrown grass and hanging vines. The air changed here. Cooler, older, thick with the smell of earth and decay. Even the sounds were different. No birds sang in these trees. And then she saw it. The hut stood in a small clearing, so covered in vines and moss it looked more like a green hill than a structure. Everyone in the family knew about this place. It was where Grandmother Neoma had lived alone for the last 15 years of her life, refusing to move into town with her son. Where she had died, they said, talking to invisible visitors. Children were forbidden from coming here. Even adults gave it wide berth. But Zina felt no fear. Only that persistent pull, stronger now, like a drumbeat in her blood. Come home. She pushed aside the vines covering the entrance and stepped inside. Time had stopped inside the hut. While the outside had surrendered to nature, the inside was impossibly preserved. Clay pots sat arranged in perfect rows along one wall. Woven baskets hung from wooden beams, their patterns still bright. The hearth in the center looked as if someone had cooked there yesterday, not 23 years ago. Zina moved slowly through the single room, her fingers trailing across surfaces that should have been covered in dust but weren't. Strange symbols were carved into the wooden support beams, patterns she recognized from her mother's whispered warnings but had never seen drawn out clearly. They looked like words, like a language just beyond her understanding. On a low table sat more of her grandmother's belongings, pestles worn smooth from use, calabashes with dried herbs still inside, pieces of chalk, cowrie shells arranged in deliberate patterns. And in the corner, wrapped in faded cloth, a small mirror that caught the light filtering through the vines in strange ways. But it was the floor that called to her. One section, near the back wall, sounded hollow when she stepped on it. Zina knelt and ran her fingers along the wooden planks until she found the seam, a hidden compartment built so cleverly it was nearly invisible. She pried it open with her fingernails. Inside lay a wooden chest, small but heavy, its surface carved with the same symbols from the beams. A rusted lock held it closed. Zina sat back on her heels, frustration building. She'd come all this way, followed that impossible voice, and now... Her hand went to her neck, to the pendant her mother had given her on her 7th birthday, the same day the curse first manifested. "Your grandmother wanted you to have this," her mother had said, her eyes wet with tears. "She said you would need it someday." It was a simple thing, a small brass key on a leather cord, tarnished with age. Zina had worn it every day for 12 years but had never found anything it unlocked. Eventually, she'd stopped thinking of it as a key at all, just a worthless trinket, a connection to a grandmother she'd never known. Her fingers trembled as she lifted it over her head. The key slid into the lock like it had been waiting. The chest opened with a soft click. Inside, journals bound in leather, their pages covered in tight script, bundles of dried herbs wrapped in cloth, a collection of small bones tied with red thread. And beneath it all, another mirror, larger than the first, its surface dark and clouded. Zina pulled out the first journal carefully. The leather was soft, well-worn. She opened it to the first page, squinting at the old script, her grandmother's handwriting. The words hit her like a physical blow. "To the daughter who will finally speak.
Were not a gift.
Our voices were not a gift.
Weapon.
They were a weapon.
Your grandfather
killed me to make sure the world would never hear them again." Zina didn't return to the compound that night. She sat cross-legged on the floor of her grandmother's hut, the journals spread around her like sacred texts, a single candle flickering against the encroaching darkness. The words on those aged pages rewrote everything she thought she knew about herself, about her family, about the curse that had defined her entire existence. Her grandmother's handwriting was steady, deliberate, the script of a woman who knew her words would outlive her. "My name is Neoma Okonkwo, and I am writing this so that the daughters who come after me will know what was stolen from us. We are not cursed. We are severed. The women of our bloodline are born with Aesi Oro, the voice of command. It is older than the missionaries' God, older than the colonial master's laws, older than the very name Okonkwo itself. My mother had it. Her mother had it. Her mother's mother commanded the wind during the Great Drought and brought rain that saved 3 villages. This is not metaphor. This is not folklore. When we speak with intention, reality bends." Zina's hands trembled as she turned the pages. Her grandmother had documented everything, stories passed down through generations of women, each more impossible than the last. Her great-great-grandmother Adiz, who once stopped a band of raiders with 3 words, "Turn back home." The men had dropped their weapons and walked in the opposite direction, confused and docile, with no memory of why they'd come. Her great-grandmother, Neka, who healed her daughter's snakebite by speaking directly to the venom. "You have no power here. Leave." The child, already convulsing and foaming at the mouth, sat up an hour later asking for food. Another ancestor, Obiagili, the namesake of Zina's own mother, who called her husband home from a business trip 2 towns away simply by speaking his name at sunset. He'd arrived before midnight, unable to explain why he'd abandoned his negotiations and walked through the night, knowing only that he had to return. Not magic, not witchcraft. Something deeper, woven into their very throats. "We did not use it lightly," Grandmother Neoma wrote. "Power without wisdom is destruction. We were taught restraint, discretion. We spoke carefully, always aware that our words carried weight beyond sound. We used it to protect, to heal, to guide. Never to dominate. But men have always feared what they cannot control. And we could not be controlled." The journal's tone shifted in the next section. The handwriting grew more urgent, more jagged. 52 years ago, the men held a secret meeting. My husband, your grandfather Ikena Okonkwo, led it. 27 men gathered in the forest under the full moon. They did not invite the women. They did not tell us what was discussed. But I heard. I followed my husband that night, my feet silent on the forest path, and I listened from the shadows as they planned our destruction. "These women with their voices," your grandfather said, "they will never truly submit. How can a man lead his home when his wife can command him with a word? How can we maintain order when our daughters can speak things into being? This power makes them proud, makes them forget their place." Another man, I recognized him as Chief Udoka, agreed. "My own wife corrected me in front of the council last month. Spoke with such force that I found myself apologizing before I realized what I was doing. This is not natural. This is not how families should work." They spoke for hours. About fear dressed up as tradition. About control disguised as protection. About the threat of women who did not need permission to be powerful. And then your grandfather proposed the solution. We bind them. Permanently.